Clare County Council, which is being urged to rescind new information that it has released around burial ground rules. Selected representatives have claimed that burial plots and fees for monument work applications are far too expensive. Local authorities also heard that some sculptors risk being delisted by the council if they don't comply with what's been described as arbitrary rules. Joining me to discuss this further is the Ennistymon Fianna Fáil Councillor Shane Talty and the monumental sculptor from Kilnamona, Michael McTigue. And good morning to both of you. Shane, you recently brought a motion before the local authority concerning the new burial ground information. We'll get to that in just a while, but can you tell us what prompted you to take that step? What is in this new information? How does it differ from what was there previously?
Yeah, good morning, Alan. At the end of January there, I was contacted by a monument sculptor in Clare, who was just alarmed and concerned, I suppose, at an email that seemed to have been sent to all monument sculptors and stonemasons that work in the burial grounds in Clare. It was sent on the 28th of January, an email with 3 documents attached running to 14 pages. And I suppose what they detailed is principally a change in the pricing structure for new burial plots, both single plots and double plots, but also the introduction of a €100 administration fee for any applications for the installation of new headstones or monuments, or for the modification, cleaning or restoration of existing or historic graves, curbing or structures. So there was huge concerns, I suppose, in that industry and profession that what was being proposed was hugely bureaucratic, I suppose, and overly too much of a burden on them in terms of administration. It requires an application in advance of any of those types of works. 3 weeks in advance, you send an application. You're supposed to send a €100 fee. Wait then to see if you get permission or don't get permission. In the event that you do, you're then required to give 3 days' notice again in advance of the works to confirm what day and time you'll be doing the works, so that you could potentially be inspected on the day. You know, that's totally impractical in an outdoor setting where people are, working to the weather and to environment and conditions. That it's not possible to predict 3 days in advance exactly where you'll be and what works you'll be carrying out in the climate we have. We know that. So it's just overly bureaucratic, and then also, I suppose, the introduction of the fee. Now, I think many professionals would acknowledge that a fee and some form of regulation and control around the installation of new headstones, that there has to be some kind of oversight and management of that might be acceptable or appropriate. But I suppose the extension of that to what would be seen as relatively everyday works around, effectively burial ground maintenance and repair. The idea that you have to enter that bureaucratic administrative system again for every piece of work that has to take place within the burial grounds.
Yeah,
that just sent it. I think we should down some of the apparatus. I mean, I think that the alternative, the fear here is that it's a disincentive to families to actually seek to maintain and repair burial grounds. And the alternative to that, it's not a strategy to simply say that they will be left to decay and ruin. I think we should be encouraging, prompt and proper burial ground maintenance and upkeep and repair rather than putting barriers in place.
But just before I go to Michael, are you concerned that families will always want to maintain and the upkeep of the burial ground of their loved one, but in times where I suppose people are finding they've more bills on their table and so on, they've a lot more financially to deal with, that these extra costs just may be beyond them?
Yeah, well, firstly, I'm very conscious that any time we have a discussion around burial grounds in Clare, it's a sensitive and it's an emotive topic, and you're right. Then I suppose, you don't want people feeling that what they consider to be right and proper and dignified and respectful to the memory of their loved ones, that to think that if they seek to carry out that work, or if they seek to engage somebody to carry out that work, that somebody, an operator could find themselves foul of the potential penalties for non-compliance with this stuff. So, I think what was called for at Monday's meeting was that there would be engagement with all stakeholders and elected members before any such changes should have been brought to bear.
Okay,
to have meaningful discussion on it.
And hopefully there will be. But Michael McTigue, just to bring you in, I wonder what your reaction was when you became aware of all of this. It sounds like you're going to have a lot more potential headaches to be dealing with going forward.
I know, as if we didn't have enough to deal with. Thanks to Clare and to the public representatives for bringing it to attention anyway. But the thing is, there's stuff in here. I have a great relationship with Clare County Council, and there's stuff here I've advocated 10, 15 years ago. I suggested to them many years ago that you could charge a fee. I didn't expect them to come back with both hands out looking for money. That's the aspect of new headstones. The restoration thing it's unworkable. So if you bring in something that's unworkable, and I'll tell you why. Like in McTigue's now, we're in our third generation. We've invested significantly in technology that will clean and restore old headstones in an environmentally sensitive and respectful way. We are going to be penalised for doing the right thing, looking for permission, of course, then, because you don't have time to do this during the day. You have to spend the weekends filling out forms, which is a slightly separate issue. But what's the alternative then is that, because I advocated 15 years ago, 20 years ago that sandblasting should be outlawed, and I've let business go to people who still do it. So the result of penalising, charging €100 plus red tape for restoring a job that might cost €300 or €400, 500 say, add another 100 onto it. It's a lot easier to go along to one of the newcomers, some less compliant person who hires the compressor, goes out, gets illegal silica sand and goes out and sandblasts a Celtic cross that would have been hand carved. They're the people who are going to be rewarded. The people who do the right thing are going to be penalised. And somebody who does a lot of this work between new headstones and restoration, you're going to, every morning when you unlock the shed, you're going to earmark €100 to collect on behalf of Clare County Council.
So, and you've laid out very well how that the money side of things is frustrating. Michael, what about the point Shane is making that you'll have to inform the council in advance of where you'll be and at what times, and how potentially impractical that is, because you could be out doing a job on a headstone and then the heavens open and you have to go, and you're not there to be inspected, but it's not really your fault. Well, you can't just stand there in the rain.
Yeah, I mean, there's graveyards here, like Kilnamona up there. It's a day's work just to get in and out of the place. I'm supposed to be up there next Monday morning, that is whatever time, and there's hailstones flying horizontally. Okay, well, you can come back Friday now. You can be 3 days' notice again. It's not workable. That's the simplest thing. And then, as I said, the bad behaviour is going to be rewarded as a result. And, the very delicate, priceless heritage work is going to be destroyed by the people who are less than conscientious about how they work.
Shane, just to bring you back in, I mean, have you mentioned that hopefully discussions will take place on this, but have you any sense at this point why the council want to make all these changes? Has there been any kind of unveiling of the logic, what their thinking is for trying to introduce these?
Well, I suppose the response we got on Monday outlines that the revision to the fees and the introduction of the fees is part of a wider look at service charges across all departments of Clare County Council. And I think I can accept that we need to look at charges for services provided, but I think we need to be informed and be involved and have discussions on that rather than seeing it. We were not informed of it. The information wasn't circulated to elected members, but rather brought to our notice by the sculptors out there. And this was at a time when there is an overall review of burial grounds bylaws in Clare. It's actively underway. Been working through the Rural Strategic Policy Committee, and I know that the members on that committee, feel that work and that process has been undermined. They're feeling undermined and a bit blindsided and frustrated that while they're working on, revising those 2015 bylaws, that you would think would capture, everything associated with what's going on in our burial grounds, that at a time that they were actively working on that this separately then was acted upon by management. And I think there's huge frustration from members of that committee on that. I think Michael's point is very, very important there, that the fear here is that the 99% honest, professional, thorough operators in Michael's industry feel that they have been been put under a burden of administration and a sense of policing in what may be an effort to address the very few rogue traders in this area. But he's correct in the sense that putting the €100 fee in place offers more potential for families to turn to rogue traders and to fly-by-night operators that will come in and out over Bank Holiday Monday, over the early mornings, get jobs done and get out of the graveyard without anybody, before anybody knows that we're there, and leave no traces to identify who did that work. So if that's the type of work we're trying to manage and trying to get a handle on, I think we need to find a more common sense and an engaged way of doing that, so that the operators like Michael and many others throughout Clare that they're doing their work properly and professionally can feel the trust of the burial grounds unit of Clare County Council, rather than a sense that there's an overarching police on them.
And Michael, that hypothetical situation Shane outlined there, I suppose on top of that as well, is that whatever work those kind of rogue traders have done is whether it was done in an environmentally sensitive way. Are you concerned that because you're trying to do things the right way, how long can you continue to refuse jobs that will go to someone who's willing to use sandblasters and so on before you reach a point where maybe you have to consider going down that route if it's really impacting your business and impacting what's going into your pocket?
Well, it shouldn't come to that we all have to just have a race to the bottom. I grew up, I could come across an old headstone that would have been hand carved by my father 60 years ago, carved with chisels that he would have made himself. And I couldn't bring myself to go attacking that. But, if there's going to be a regulation, it should be for the benefit and the restoration. And, the stuff in here that I've been advocating 10, 15 years ago. But we'll say the approach to this, we got a notification on the 28th of January about charges that applied from the 1st of January. Okay, I pointed that out and this is okay, we'll think about that. If that can be amended by way of a phone call, I'll give you an example. 15 years ago, some person, well-meaning, who thought they knew best, says, no more headstones going up to any higher than 1.5 metres, 5 feet. I pointed out, I says, why are we banning Celtic crosses? Oh, gee, we never thought of that. Okay, we'll allow Celtic crosses. That can be done by a simple conversation. So there's no reason why the unworkable proposals here cannot be amended as well. And can I jump slightly to another proposal in here while I'm on a roll here? There's a list of 134 burial grounds here, from one end of the county to the other, in alphabetical order from Belair to Tulla. No new headstones ever again going to be allowed put up in there. Where is the logic in that?
Yeah, Shane, it's kind of wondering the same myself.
Yeah, that's a whole other piece.
They want drawings in. If there's a special job going up, and at McTigue's we often get into doing once-off jobs. There's a proposal there we have to supply CAD drawings. I mean, I wouldn't, if I had the technology, I wouldn't know how to use it. And we're going to spend Saturday and Sunday doing up stuff like this.
Yeah, you told us in our in-profile conversation, Michael, that you don't really go in for the schematic side of things. It's just you have the concept in your head and you work off that.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll start a job and it'll end up different from when I make it up as you go along for the one, as I said before. So how do you comply then? Somebody says, oh, this is different now from the specification. We said then it'll be easier just ignore the whole thing.
Shane, just to finish with yourself then, Michael has mentioned on previous occasions where he has highlighted an aberration or maybe something that wasn't fully thought through and there was compromise or acknowledgement made of that. Does that give you hope that some changes or alterations or some elements of these new rules can be rescinded? When do you expect any sort of discussions to take place?
Look, I suppose at Monday's meeting, my motion received, overwhelming support from elected members and colleagues. But the response from management, was that they were fairly uncompromising on their introduction of fees and changes to fees, and that was an executive function. They did suggest that they could hold a workshop with the sculptors to further explain the process and conditions. But really, it's a discussion, I suppose, that shows some level of common sense and understanding. I do think some management were a bit taken aback as they, if you take the documents at their word and read them as in black and white as they're printed, they leave very little scope for what I would describe as common sense day-to-day pieces of work, which I do think some management felt, that we could offer some sense of I suppose, peace of mind for operators in this industry. So I suppose if we can either ease the language or, at least document maybe what a more common sense day-to-day practical working solution might be, particularly for some of the more minor works. They do say that there's light works that won't require the permission or the fee, but then they specify what those works are, and they're simply inscriptions or the replacement of gravel or chippings. That's a very limited list of light works. I think there is much more that could be included under that title.
Okay, look, we'll have to park it there for the moment, but we'll keep across this story as developments happen. My thanks to both of you, the Ennistymon Fianna Fáil Councillor Shane Talty there, and the Kilnamona monumental sculptor Michael McTigue.